Picture Michael Scott, but mean. Not the lovable idiot you quote with your friends. Not the guy who just wants a hug and a birthday party. A bitter, charmless copy of a British boss that test audiences couldn't stand. That was the original plan. The first season was just 6 episodes. It drew some of the worst numbers on the network. And it sat one decision away from cancellation. The early version of Michael tested so badly they had to rewrite who he was. And if that one thing hadn't changed, you'd have never heard of this show. This is the version of The Office you were never supposed to see. To understand how the American Office almost died, you have to start in England. In 2001, 2 writers named Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant made a little mockumentary about a paper company in a town called Slough. It was uncomfortable. It was brilliant. And at its center was the worst boss on television, David Brent. 2 seasons, 2 Christmas specials, and it was done. A perfect self-contained masterpiece. The kind of thing you don't touch. So naturally, an American network decided to touch it. And almost everyone, inside the industry and out, thought it was a terrible idea. They weren't wrong to worry. British comedy and American comedy don't always translate. The UK Office ran on awkward silence, on bleakness, on a boss you were meant to pity and squirm at, not love. And the man they handed it to knew that better than anyone. Greg Daniels, a writer who'd cut his teeth on The Simpsons and King of the Hill. He didn't want to make a photocopy of a British hit, but that's almost exactly what the first attempt would become. Because there was one rule hanging over the whole project, and that rule nearly sank it. The pilot of The American Office is something close to a scene-by-scene remake of the British pilot. Same setup, same jokes, same documentary stare, lines lifted almost word for word, just relocated from Slough to Scranton. On paper, it makes sense. The British pilot was a masterpiece. Why not just translate it? But here's the problem nobody saw coming. David Brent worked in England because British audiences had a specific relationship with that kind of character. The deluded middle manager you love to cringe at. Drop that exact same man into an American sitcom in front of an American test audience that had never seen the original, and he just came off as a jerk. This is Season 1 Michael. He has all of Steve Carell's awkwardness, but bolted onto David Brent's rudeness. He's insensitive, he's hard to watch, and crucially, there's almost nothing underneath to make you root for him. The lowest, not low, the lowest they'd ever recorded. And that's where most shows quietly die. But before we get to how they saved it, you have to understand how many times this show almost didn't exist at all, because the pilot test was only one of the landmines. The man who would become Michael Scott was, at the time, shooting Anchorman. He wasn't sure he should even go out for the role, and a friend on set gave him what might be the worst career advice in comedy history. That friend was Paul Rudd, and he wasn't being cruel, he was being normal. Everyone in town was telling Carell the same thing. Don't touch this remake with a 10-foot pole. He auditioned anyway. Daniels had actually wanted Carell from early on. He'd seen him steal scenes in Bruce Almighty and thought, this guy is fabulous. But Carell had taken another sitcom, a show called Come to Papa. If Come to Papa had been a hit, Carell would have been unavailable. The role would have gone elsewhere. The other top pick, Bob Odenkirk, years before Better Call Saul, made him a household name. The part was essentially his to lose, until Come to Papa was cancelled after just a handful of episodes, and Carell was suddenly free. One cancelled sitcom you've never heard of is the only reason the Michael Scott you know exists. And it wasn't just Michael. Pull the thread on this cast, and the whole tapestry nearly unravels. Before John Krasinski was Jim, the role was chased by Adam Scott, who'd later land on Parks and Recreation, along with Hamish Linklater and reportedly John Cho, fresh off Harold and Kumar. The producers actually wanted Krasinski to read for Dwight. He held out for Jim, and Rainn Wilson, the man who would become Dwight Schrute, originally walked in to read for Michael Scott. So did, of all people, Nick Offerman, the future Ron Swanson auditioning to run Dunder Mifflin. More than 35 actors read for Michael alone. Change any one of these calls. Krasinski reads for Dwight and gets it. Carell's other show survives. and the chemistry that carried this fragile, hated little pilot never happens. But here's the thing, the chemistry wasn't the problem. The casting wasn't really the problem either. The problem was the one rule they'd followed too faithfully. After that disastrous first season, 6 episodes, brutal numbers, a pilot the network's own testing called the worst it had ever seen, Greg Daniels made a decision that saved the show. He stopped copying the British version. The fix wasn't a new cast. It wasn't a new setting. It was a single, surgical change to one character, Michael Scott. They kept the cringe. They kept the neediness, the terrible jokes, the desperate hunger to be liked, but they pulled out the cruelty. They gave him a heart. The new Michael wasn't a bad man pretending to be nice for the cameras, the way Brent was. He was a lonely man who genuinely loved the people he worked with, and just had no idea how to show it. That's the difference between a character you endure and a character you'd take a bullet for. Same haircut, same office, same actor. One small adjustment to the soul of the thing, and suddenly the whole show works. It's the same lesson over and over on this channel. Greatness is so often one decision away from never existing. But fixing Michael didn't make the show a hit overnight, not even close. The Office limped through its first season as a mid-season replacement nobody expected to survive. By every normal metric, it should have been gone. What saved it was a collision of timing the creators couldn't have planned. First, the culture cracked open a door. The huge sitcoms of the 90s, Friends, Frasier, were ending. Network comedy felt tired. There was suddenly room for something stranger. Second, and this is the part that mirrors almost every story we tell here, technology rescued it. Carell's movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, turned him into a star between seasons. iTunes started selling episodes. The show found the audience that network ratings had missed. The hated pilot, the meaner Michael, the 6-episode season that almost got the plug pulled. All of it. One timing break away from being a footnote. Instead, 9 seasons, 201 episodes, one of the most rewatched shows in television history, and a role that earned Steve Carell 6 Emmy nominations and made him a household name around the world. Here's what gets me about this one. Everything that makes The Office the Office. The warmth, the family, the feeling that these ridiculous people actually love each other. None of it was in the plan. The plan was a faithful copy of a British masterpiece, and that plan produced the worst testing pilot in the network's history. The show we love wasn't the vision, it was the correction. And maybe that's the most hopeful thing I can tell you, because if you've ever made something that landed flat, that people actively didn't like, the story of this show is proof that the first version isn't the verdict. They didn't have a great show, they had a hated one, and instead of walking away, they found the one thing that was broken, and they fixed it. Picture Michael Scott, but mean. That was the plan. Thank God it wasn't the ending. This is before the credits. If you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it, the next one's right there on your screen. And as always, thank you for watching.